As Big 12 media days are completely finished now, the next step for Big 12 football is fall camp. And with there being a lot of Big 12 talk this past week, the past few weeks we've spent a decent amount of time talking about Big 12 quarterbacks, some storylines, and some film breakdowns. And I want to continue that today, and then we will move on to a different conference. But this is probably the last Big 12 talk. At least for the foreseeable future until fall camp gets going, there's some quarterback competitions. And today I want to talk about two quarterbacks that are similar as far as being middle of the pack kind of Big 12 guys with potential to be upper tier quarterbacks in the Big 12. They've shown a lot of potential. It's just consistency has been their biggest thing. And the fact that they are similar as far as being the middle of the pack, they are very different quarterbacks, very different styles. Stylistically and schematically, their offenses are different. And so there's going to be a little bit of give and a little bit of take with each one. But I still think a good comparison, a good talk about what quarterback you'd rather have and why. But before we dive into the talk here, I want to encourage you to just consider subscribing to this channel. If you like any YouTube-related, not YouTube, if you like any quarterback-related content, please consider subscribing to this channel. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into this stuff. And I apologize for looking like a psycho. I've been outside a lot of the day, and I am just getting in. So let's talk about West Virginia quarterback Jarret Doege. And he's a guy that we put out a film breakdown about 2 weeks ago or so and kind of went into a deep dive of what makes him a good quarterback and the steps he needs to take. So if you're interested in actually watching the film deep dive of him, I encourage you to go back and watch that video. But Jarret Doege, the transfer from Bowling Green, who is entering his now third year at West Virginia, has been a solid quarterback, I think, and there's a few things that he can do to take the next step to kind of get to that upper tier Big 12 quarterback position. But let's go back and look at his history as of being a quarterback, because there are a few things we need to build on. So he started his college career at Bowling Green, and a few of the things that jump off is his ability to take care of the football. He's always had a good TD to interception ratio, so he's able to keep his teams in games and keep them in a position to win. And his first year starting at Bowling Green, he had 12 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. Second year, 27 touchdowns with 12 interceptions. That was his worst TD to interception ratio, but again, he threw that was his highest touchdowns per year. His season high, his career high touchdowns was 27, and then he has his most pass attempts. His first year starting at West Virginia, he took over for Austin Kendall at the end of the year, so he only had 7 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. Not a huge playing time there. And then last year in 2020, 14 touchdowns with the 4 interceptions. So about that 3-to-1 TD to interception ratio, which is a pretty good ratio. Now, the one thing we want to see some improvement on is the ability to push the ball downfield, his yards per attempt. His first year starting was 7.3, then 6.8, 6.8, and 6.9 last year. So it's been under 7. So for people that aren't interested or aren't familiar with yards per attempt, you definitely want to be in that 7 to 7.5 at least range of pushing the ball downfield to keep the defense honest. And that's one thing that he hasn't done over the course of his career. I think some of that has to do with West Virginia's offense, but also the fact that he was similar numbers at Bowling Green is kind of telling as well. So I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's got a lot of potential if he takes the next step. It's just being a bit more consistent and taking that next step, which in my opinion would be pushing the ball downfield a bit more. He's not very mobile, so that's something that he does not have going for him. But I think he has some good anticipation throws, and with West Virginia's offense being a lot of like pre-snap movement, pre-snap motion, he's able to get the defense out of position and take advantage of that. So that's another thing he's got going for him. So just to kind of review that, the pros, I think he takes what the defense gives him, right? When you take what the defense gives you, you're always going to be in a position to potentially win, or you're at least not going to lose the game for your team. And then taking care of the football as well. The cons, the lack of big playability and not pushing the ball downfield. And to take that next step at some point, regardless if it's the offense's fault or not, you're going to have to push the ball downfield, take some risks. So I think that's kind of the next step that he has to do as a quarterback to improve and to get to the next level and to kind of get to that upper tier, one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. Again, he's got the potential. It's just taking the next steps. Okay, let's dive into Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. Again, middle of the pack guy, but potential to be top upper tier, if you will. And he's been inconsistent. The only consistent thing kind of about his play is his completion percentage. And so both years starting in 2019 and 2020, he completed 155 passes out of his 247 attempts. So just kind of a weird random stat, but I thought I would throw that in there. So besides that, he's been kind of inconsistent up and down. 2019, he had a good freshman season. I think it had a lot of fans excited. So I think 2020, I don't think he took the step a lot of people were necessarily expecting. And so I think maybe some people have been down on him because of that. And I understand that, but at the same time, 2020 was a crazy year. And I think he's got a lot of potential. And I think 2021, he really could take a next step and be a good quarterback in the Big 12 and kind of be considered in that top level shelf, if you will. So as far as his career stats goes, he has 30 total passing touchdowns, 4 total rushing touchdowns and 19 interceptions. So you want that TD to interception ratio. You want that to be a bit better. Like compared to Jarret Doege's was really good. Oklahoma State's Spencer Sanders was not is not great as of right now. What we do like about him is he's a dynamic athlete. He can make plays with his legs, and when he's in rhythm, he's a good passer too. It's just a lot of times mechanically there'll be some things that are off, and the balls will float on him, and some of his passing is questionable. But the potential is there, and as far as big playability, he definitely has it from lower half, but also from passing. Yards per attempt in both years starting were 8.4 and 8.1. So I think that's a good yards per attempt average right there, and I think he can probably build a bit more once the passing game gets a bit better. His rushing yards in one of his years starting, it was about 628. The other year was about 269. Excuse me. So he has the ability to use his legs to pick up first downs, but also to hurt defenses. And Spencer Sanders is someone else that we broke down his game film as well a few weeks ago. So if you're interested in kind of the more details of his game and can kind of see examples of what we're talking about, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that video as well. So just to kind of review Spencer Sanders, he didn't take the next step people expected in 2020, but I don't know if it was all his fault. There's a lot of factors going on, and he did kind of got injured the first game, so that could have been lingering as well. But some of the pros, his big playability, and he's a dynamic athlete. So you know you're going to get some big plays, but it can be hit or miss, right? But he does have that ability to make big plays. Some of the cons, the turnovers being number one. You want to improve that TD to interception ratio, and then being inconsistent as well, the up and down play. So both Jarret Doege and Spencer Sanders, I think both have potential, but I want to hear from you. Who would you rather have as your quarterback? You have one guy who's a bit more conservative, takes what the defense gives him, but he takes care of the ball and puts his team in a situation to win. And then you have Spencer Sanders, who is a little more gunslinger-ish, may not be as, consistent taking care of the ball and will take some risks, but you'll get some big plays and you will get rewarded because of those risks and big plays. Again, I like both quarterbacks. Both have potential. They just need to take that next step. But I want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. Who would you rather have as your quarterback, and what do you think each quarterback needs to do to take the next step and to be potentially a top-level quarterback in the Big 12?